WWE 2K22 was a welcoming return for the 2K titles. 2K20 had almost killed the entire franchise as the game was filled with glitches, the graphics took a downgrade, and the My career was bad. But regardless of the glitches, it was missing a lot. The fate of the 2K series was questionable heading into the following year. 2K Sports couldn't afford another setback for the WWE games because if 2K22 wasn't critically and financially successful, it was done. That said, it was a good game. It was a step in the right direction and it lit a fire under them because 2K had been complacent, doing the bare minimum. They're still doing some questionable things to this very day, but it was much worse in the past. They brought a new engine, updated graphics, and the game finally felt different. And that's what mattered most. So with the success of 2K22, the attention was once again on the next installment, WWE 2K23. With that said, let's get into it. The gameplay of WWE 2K23 is slightly different to 2K22. What it comes down to is some minor adjustments. Personally speaking, I wasn't expecting some groundbreaking change. It's 2K22's brother. So you had the same combos, you had to press twice for an Irish whip, and I hear a lot of people hate that. I don't mind it, but I can see why. The action definitely feels smoother, moves flow well, there's some nice sequences, and at times it's absolutely amazing, because it emulates a real match with some cool sequences. It's really fun when these moments happen. Stamina is once again an important element in WWE games. Every once in a while it's a big point in here, that's what it was. As the match goes on, you feel a heavy weight on your shoulders trying to combat your opponent and do it with just a little left in the tank. It's not as important as SVR 2006 though. The pin meter was changed and it's a bigger challenge for me, which I haven't gotten used to. And after screwing up a bunch of matches, I returned to the button thing. It really does a huge difference for me, the fact that I could actually change it rather than them just flat out removing it and keeping one setting. You know, that's nice. I don't like when they remove a feature and add something else. It's like, what's the point? And another thing to mention is the reversals. Now, I don't know if it's just me, but it feels like after you fail to reverse two moves, the opponent has complete control over you. Sometimes I take a beating for a minute. Here, I was Cody Rhodes atop the Hell in a Cell and I was trying to find ways, but to no avail. The AI in general has gotten more intelligent. At times it seems as if you can't string together two consecutive combos. And once they do that, there's a 60% chance of you taking a minute-long beating. Tag teams stick together in the Royal Rumble, which I thought was very cool, especially having the Bloodline in the Rumble. It mirrors WWE well. And what also helps the gameplay is that you can tune and customize the AI settings. This was never in the WWE games before. Of course, sliders were always available, but it was never as expansive as this. I saw some make their own custom sliders and it was tough, it was nice. The matches could end at any time, even a suplex would wrap it up, so if you like a challenge, there's that option. Now, we talked about the gameplay, but what about the matches? WWE 2K23 had one major match inclusion, a match that was requested for years. War Games. War Games had been around in the WWE for a couple of years now, and it felt like 2K avoided the constant requests until now. War Games was a welcoming inclusion because we sorely lacked an entirely new match type. I played it a couple of times and it's cool. You can bring in the weapons and cause chaos like the real life matches, and it would have been the most 2K thing if they didn't bring in the weapons, but they did just that. Other than War Games, the backstage area was slightly altered. I personally don't like it that much because it lacks variety. It's just a back area and parking lot. There's no locker room, and there's not a single different type of area in the backstage. And I think that's unfortunate. They should have built upon the older areas, because playing a Falls Count Anywhere match, I don't really care to go to the back. Overall, the gameplay was certainly improved. It's not a significant change. If you use the right arena, it will feel like you're playing 2K22 on the surface, but as you play the match more, you start to notice the differences. And I'd say they're better because it makes the game more enjoyable. There's been some glitches, but as the updates come in, I see them less often. And again, if you like the gameplay of 2K22, I'm almost certain you'll like WWE 2K23. Matches seem longer, more challenging, even on the easier difficulties. Like John Cena at one point was whooping me, and I had the game on easy. The graphics for WWE 2K23 have taken a very slight difference. It's more noticeable in smaller areas like Triple H's entrance or the flaming table, and it doesn't feel too big, but they certainly worked on the lighting. It shows more during the entrances and on a 4K TV with the PS5, and it really looks great. I really love how they emphasized working on the older arenas. SmackDown 2002 looks excellent. Backlash 2003. WrestleMania 34 is probably the best looking arena I've seen in this entire game. It replicates the real life one so well. 2K really put in work to make these arenas look authentic and realistic. The actual wrestlers look nice. Not everyone, of course. You can't have them all, but Cody Rhodes is probably the best looking new addition on the current roster for me. They just captured him well. A lot of the wrestlers had some work done on them for the positive, and for the classic wrestlers, they look younger and more in line with the time period they're set in. Even Bruno Sammartino, who wasn't scanned, looked authentic. Kurt Angle was excellent. Some of the John Cena's were good, and the reason why some comes down to the fact that 06 Cena looks like he had a midlife crisis and wanted to go back to times where he actually kicked out of finishers. However, the single best model in probably the entire game has to be 2009 Randy Orton. 2K perfectly captured the cold and calculated expression on Randy Orton, who was dead set to make his opponent's life a living hell in many ways. Everything about this model was perfect, and it also makes me want to play SVR 2011, which is ironic. The graphics in general don't take a big step forward, however at times it's very noticeable that 2K put in work to improve the visuals. WWE 2K23's roster has a strong representation of WWE around 2022. Of course, some of these wrestlers were hidden behind DLC, but for the most part, everyone's there. They even went as far as to include some returning wrestlers such as Johnny Gargano. SummerSlam brought the return of Dakota Kai and Io Sky, and they're in the game, which is cool and also surprising because usually 2K doesn't really push hard towards the cutoff date unless it's somebody like Brock Lesnar. That was not the case here, and you gotta commend them for that. There was more effort in making the roster as up to date as possible. Even Sami Zayn was updated to his most recent self. Of course, you're gonna see some outdated wrestlers, that's always gonna happen, and 2K was a little too up to date, deciding to remove Mandy Rose from the game. I assume it's because she wasn't involved with MyRise and most likely WWE demanding it. The cutoff date seems like October, but there's some wrestlers who were left out. Roddy Strong, Saray, but from the main roster, it's mostly those that debuted in November and onwards like Emma, Michin, Mia Yim. Then you have guys like Bray Wyatt who are set to be DLC, so it's more in line. You know, the cutoff date seems like November because the Good Brothers are in, Bray Wyatt's coming, so it's up to date. My problem with some of the DLC is that most of the NXT wrestlers debuted a while ago, even before 2K22 came out, so in some ways they're in the DLC to pad it out. It's not a big deal because this is 2K, you know, I don't expect some UFC roster updates, but the NXT additions are very welcome. The roster feels even deeper for the black and gold brand, legends are slightly different, and obviously there's some that are missing such as Ric Flair, Ricky Steamboat, but there was notable additions such as Bruno Sammartino, Kurt Angle, and then you had DLC for the Steiner brothers, Harley Race, and Zeus. They really want me to make a Debo attire and have him throw around Smokey. Molly Holly in particular has a bright light on her. She has 3 different models which clearly had to do with MyRise. I thought that's cool and hoped we'd see a little more with that, but it is what it is. There's always going to be omissions, but I don't think they were as bad as last year. 2K23's roster is very diverse and probably the most expansive in the entire series. There's some legends that should have been in the game like Ric Flair and Mr. Perfect, even Mankind, but we don't know what went down with those names and the status of their rights. The most interesting area of WWE games for many is the Creation Suite. For as much flack as the series receives for the lack of innovation and the lack of effort in the Creation Suite, it's one of my personal favorites for video games. It's very extensive and allows you to mirror a certain wrestler's look or even some celebrities. We don't see many games that have that. The WWE games allow for you to do that, not to mention the movesets and entrances. Now, in the wake of WWE 2K20, 2K found out that the majority of glitches to come from the game derive from creating entrance. The option was much more shallow for 2K22, but it's back. You can spam a bunch of Pyro for Cody Rhodes, which I highly recommend you don't do because it removes his theme song. Championship entrances can be configured properly, double champion entrances aren't selectable, and it's clear that they need to fix this. The rest of the Creation Suite is the same old stuff. Create an Arena has some props, but the most notable difference is Create a Wrestler. Create a Superstar has undergone a very noticeable change. The created wrestlers look more realistic and in line with the actual in-game models. It shows that 2K put in effort, but some of them, they fit exactly with the game. A lot of these are great, even better than previous years. Overall, the Creation Suite doesn't have a major difference, but what helps is the Create a Wrestler is much better. Other than that, Create an Entrance brought back some features, but I don't think many expected something huge here because even when 2K does something, they mess up another thing. That's what happened with Create an Entrance. The return of MyFaction. 2K Sports has once again added a money-grabbing system. The advent of FIFA Ultimate Team and 2K's own MyPlayer and MyTeam meant that the WWE games was going to have some sort of game mode relating to coins, in-game currency. Enter MyFaction. Now, the thing with this game mode is you can achieve something. That said, it takes you a while. MyFaction is very time consuming. There's new options such as 1v1 online, but there's a huge cloud above this game mode. The fact that content is exclusive. Shawn Michaels 97, grind. And even then, you can't play with him in the regular modes. It turns the mode from already disliked to hated, and 2K knows this very well. It's all about the money at the end of the day. MyFaction is something I almost never touch. It's just not that appealing to me, and I know there has to be some of you that play it for the rewards just to complete the entire game, but I personally don't really like it. MyRise once again makes a grand return to the 2K series. This time around, the stories took a page from actual WWE. The Lock in particular. The Lock was the men's storyline in which the created wrestler receives a gimmick. The gimmick felt authentic and in line with the WWE storyline, but eventually you break free, choosing which faction to join, whether it be Evolution or the Hurt Business. Throughout the way, you can unlock arenas, Jean-Paul Levesque, and Ezekiel. There's a lot of goofy encounters in both stories. Some of these are quite amusing. And on the other side, the legacy, personally speaking, to me was an improvement. It was much better than the lock. I feel like they did a good job with it. You're the niece of a WWE legend, she wants the best for you, but just as you're doing your own thing, the character doesn't need her much, leading to her growing jealous because her career was deprived, and a big WrestleMania match against her. The unlockables include some entire parts, 3 Molly Holly models because she had a heavy influence on the story, and one thing in particular I loved about the story was the mystery elimination chamber pot. I think that gave a flashback to the old WWE games where they'd show great ambition and creativity. Hell, I want WWE to do something like that in the future. Overall, MyRise is something. It's not that memorable for me, and if I didn't go back, I don't really remember much about it. It also doesn't help that they always get compared to the old WWE games, and rightfully so. Just some ridiculous stuff going down. At the end of the day, it's a game. We're supposed to see some wild stuff that doesn't make sense, but it lacks that, and MyRise is just there. MyGM returns to 2K23 after a questionable inclusion to 2K22. There were some things off with the mode, such as the lack of mid-card titles, but this time around, the titles are in. There's more general managers, and instead of the season concluding after a year, it continues. You can use cards, which can help in many ways, whether it's gaining money or fans, but there's still some setbacks that prevent this mode from reaching its true potential. And it's always some small things like the lack of multi-man title matches. On the other side, 2K did add a lot of match types, but to leave out fatal 4-way title matches is confusing. That said, it's more good than bad for me. There's Hall of Fame trophies, more titles, more competition to face weekly, and it's going to take a while, but this mode is going to be well received in future titles. I do think it's unfortunate now because some of this stuff looks easy to add on the surface level. Add to that, similar to the story mode, it's always going to be compared to the older ones, which did a lot more in its shorter time. Universe mode is back, and in 2K's eyes, even better. The mode still needs a little more, which I feel is entirely possible. You can still book your own shows and feuds, with the one big inclusion being the rivalry system. Similar to Story Designer, you can choose cutscenes to match the rivalry you're in. The way 2K spoke about this, they made it seem like some grand addition that would change everything, but the actual cutscenes are pretty shallow. I was expecting some big ass moments you could add to the post-match scene, but it's the same stuff. There's a lot of cutscenes they could have used from MyRise, but they didn't. And in addition, there was a lot of glitches in the universe mode. You can't do tag team entrances, multi-man entrances, just so damn confusing. There's actual glitches in the match with the manager teleporting and some stuff, and it's just very confusing, you know? Like, I felt like the mode was going to be even better than it was last year, but it doesn't feel that way for me personally. Some people weren't happy with them removing the show intro. I personally don't really care for that, but I could see why somebody would get frustrated with that, because it adds authenticity to the show, makes it look like an actual program. Like, yeah, like universe mode, they gotta work harder on that. It just feels like they abandoned it and be like, oh, here's this rivalry system. It's great that they brought it in, but the way they promoted it, they made it seem like it was something big. And it is big, but it's not as big as they made it out to be. So yeah. Showcase mode is back. 2K's flagship game mode, which emulates real-life WWE stories and careers, has returned. This time around, it's centered on the 16-time champ, the face that runs the place, John Cena. 2022 marked the 20th anniversary of John Cena's debut in a career filled with countless moments and accolades. Cena's mark was by far the biggest in that time in WWE, so it wasn't shocking to see him as the star of the Showcase mode. The Showcase, though, takes a different approach. Instead of playing as John Cena, you play as his opponents in matches where he suffered a loss. I personally thought this was a very smart tactic. Not because it's creative, but because if it was a regular Showcase, that would require more work, rematches, and you guys know 2K ain't down with the long Showcases anymore. So the 14 matches would have to turn into 28 or even more. The Showcase doesn't have any surprising inclusions, and unlike last year, the matches are scattered around the place with John Cena talking about his experiences. The mode flies through easily. If you want easy mode to go through the matches, it goes by quickly. You go through the matches in about an hour and a half. And about the actual gameplay, I didn't like how they mixed the real life footage and even left some of the final parts of the match to that. So you're playing to basically activate a real life scene. Not to mention the lack of commentary. It makes things soulless. The Showcase, though, has some charm from it later on. The actual creative stuff, the things that came from 2K themselves.
Here we go. Cena picks Orton out of the air. Attitude adjustment, Cena. What? Cover.
But this Showcase was not what I expected it to be. I did somewhat sense it, but thought, hey, it's John Cena, surely not. And a lot of his classic matches are missing. It is what it is, though, and I only hope 2K makes an alternate type of Showcase, something that would be creative. Like, what if John Cena faced Undertaker at WrestleMania 23? It'd represent that time period well and not feel out of place. It would be cool, but yeah, Showcase, it goes by quickly. I like the ending of it, you know, towards the end with Super Cena. There's some fun stuff there, but in general, I'm not really going to be interested in playing it later on. Overall, WWE 2K23 is a noticeable improvement over 2K22. Once you get a feel of the game and actually play through it, you'll notice that it's a bit better than 2K22. Is it outright better? Like, oh my god, this is the best WWE game? I don't think so, but it really fixes a lot of issues from previous years. And in addition, with 2K22, showed that they're going through an entirely different direction and trying to make things much better than they were in the past. 2K does stuff, you know, they give and take. But I feel like they're doing much better than they did in the past few years. My personal favorite part of the game is, of course, the gameplay. Once you actually play a couple of matches, you'll notice that it's changed and it's better. I like it. It feels a bit more challenging. MyGM, better. MyRise is here and there. Universe, I feel like it needs some work. I hope they actually focus on it for 2K24, which is unfortunate because I feel like this mode has the best potential out of any in the WWE games. If you like 2K22, you are going to be interested. It's a better game for certain. However, if you're not, I don't really think this is the game for you. For those of you that were expecting some significant changes, there's not many, and me personally, I didn't really expect that because this is a sports title. At the end of the day, when I play FIFA, I want the updated roster, I want the updated teams, the badges, all of that. With 2K, it's almost the same thing. I just want to see a little improvement here and there. I'm not expecting something big, but that's just me speaking. And 2K23, I'm satisfied with that. I thought it was a very good game. It's actually the best WWE game in a while, although the bar is pretty damn low if we looked at the past few games. Alright, what do you guys think of WWE 2K23? Please comment down below. That's the first video. Make sure you hit the STFU on the like button and perhaps the attitude adjustment on the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.